Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And we are here in the Juice Box once again, and it's not just me in the Juice Box. I have a few friends that have, decided to hop on in, slide through the straw. We got Josh Cross, we got Donnie, we have Triple Threat Theater once again, and I could not be more thrilled to talk to these guys. Had them on a few, I want to say months ago as we led up to WrestleMania. And they were the first actual guests on this show. We talked about a lot of different topics, and now I have a few more that I'd like to dive into. So let's just get things started. First of all, Josh, how are you? Donnie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Juice. How have you been doing lately? Long time no see.
Yeah, long time no see, long time no talk. But wrestling's great. Everything's great. Donnie, how about you, man?
I'm doing good, bro. It's good to be back. Glad to, be back on the show again, talk wrestling with you guys. Always a blast. So, I'm ready to get into it.
Hell yeah, let's get into it. So, July 1st, Money in the Bank. It's some people call it the Big Five. This is a pay-per-view that came from a match concept in 2005 that within 5 years became its own pay-per-view. And now it has a whole different type of lineage where we have two separate ladder matches, one for the men, one for the women. But this year specifically has an interesting wrinkle to it. And I want to go back to the Royal Rumble, was it 2020, when the NXT title was challenged by way of winning the Royal Rumble. If I'm naming that year, then I do apologize. But now we have a Money in the Bank ladder match where if you win the match and obtain the contract, you can go for the world title if you choose, but it only stipulates that you have to challenge for a championship. So that begs the question, as we will only in this specific topic discuss the men's match with all six competitors being announced so far. That's why we're not going to tackle the women's one as of yet. But right now in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura, L.A. Knight, Santos Escobar, Butch, and Damian Priest. Now, some of these guys have been close to the world title picture, but none of them have reached the mountaintop. So I ask both of you, we'll start with you, Josh, who should win Money in the Bank and why? And, in addition to that, do you have a problem and maybe a solution as to why the contract now states any championship could be obtained? Maybe not the tag, but it seems like at least a solo title could be obtained, like the IC or US could be vied for if you obtain this contract. But my thing is, why would you want to? Go ahead, Josh. Let's see what you got.
So, to start off with, I'll be honest with you, I do not like the idea that the Money in the Bank briefcase should be for any solo championship. I firmly believe it should be for either of the world titles. I did not like what Theory did last year to cash it in for the US title. I understand why they had to do it, because I don't feel like Theory was ready to go up against Roman at the time. And obviously Roman was not going to lose to Theory either. So it made sense why they had to do it last year. But now, since you have two world titles, you can have one of those guys, and honestly, almost all of them could be a realistic challenger to Rollins, especially Nakamura, Priest, and LA Knight. So like I said, you don't have that problem like you had last year. And honestly, I think there's only one person who should be getting that briefcase this year, and it is LA Knight. LA Knight, essentially, how I like to describe him is he's stone cold imitating The Rock. He has the look. He's starting to get the fans behind him. He definitely has the speaking ability to put himself and other people over. he is due his I don't know how I want to describe this. He is basically due for what happened at Mania, or lack of what happened at Mania. He should have had a match at Mania, and I believe this is a perfect opportunity for him to redeem himself for what happened, or for or for the company to redeem him. He doesn't need to cash in against Rollins right away. He can hold that briefcase until Mania, and he can face off whoever is the World Heavyweight Champion at that event.
I like those points. I can't really disagree with you as we get ready to talk to Donnie here. However, there is a criticism I've heard recently about LA Knight. Now, we all can agree he's extremely over with the audience. I mean, during the pandemic when NWA Power became a huge success online, I was a huge Eli Drake fan. And I knew that the charisma was there, but I just didn't know what it could be, which is funny because we will be talking about missed opportunities and untapped potential in the last part of the Triple Threat Theater. But to me, I've heard the criticism that LA Knight is too much of an emulation. He's too much of he's doing Stone Cold, or like you said, he's The Rock impersonating Stone Cold. I'd like to go back a couple weeks when superstar Billy Graham passed away. All the positive notes that were towards superstar Billy Graham. Do you know what was really the big takeaway from all of those types of reports and obituaries about the guy? Was that look how many people this man influenced. Ric Flair took from him. Jesse Ventura took from him. Dusty Rhodes took. All these guys took a little bit from this guy, from superstar Billy Graham, and turned it into their own niche. Hell, Ric Flair took the Nature Boy moniker from the Nature Boy and became his own character and did his own spin on it. And now you can see where, now it's Ric Flair's the real Nature Boy that people remember, not Buddy Rogers. So I don't really find it an issue that LA Knight has these mannerisms or, the catchphrase-esque type stuff, because it is different. He's not saying what, he's saying yeah, and it's the type of way he's saying it, but the fans are with him. That's the key point, is that the fans buy it. So I'm in agreement. I think LA Knight's the only guy to win. Donnie, we've been yapping. Let's hear who you think should win Money in the Bank, and do you have a problem being able to cash in on any title?
Okay, I'll address that first. I think the stipulation and why they came up with it is just a way to explain away what you had mentioned earlier about Austin Theory cashing in for the U.S. Championship. I think it's just, trying to tie loose ends as far as that's concerned. I don't really have an issue with it so much like in that sense, but let's be honest, I don't really see anybody cashing in the Money in the Bank briefcase on a mid-card title or a tag team title. Like, that just wouldn't make much sense to me. The only other reason I could see somebody trying to avoid anything is Roman, because obviously everything that comes along with being in the title match with Roman, you're worried about interference, this, that, and the other thing. So I could see that as like kind of an intimidation factor as to why you wouldn't want to cash in on Roman and maybe go for Seth Rollins or whoever happens to be the World Heavyweight Champion at the time. That's the most logical aspect I can grasp from it as far as that goes. But my prediction, it's pretty much the same as Josh's, so, I'm just going to ask the question. Whose game is it? It's LA Knight's game, baby. Yeah! He's going to walk into Money in the Bank. He's going to climb the ladder. He's going to take the briefcase that's pretty much already his. He's going to take his guaranteed title opportunity. He's going to cash in on Seth Rollins, and he's going to win the World Heavyweight Championship. I know that's a bold prediction, but the man has been on a roll since Royal Rumble. He's the king of taking chicken shit and turning it into chicken salad with the Max Dupree gimmick and that terrible blackout Royal Rumble match, whatever it was called. I forget. That's how bad it was. But I think it's going to be LA's night to shine. I really do. And if I had to take a runner-up or like a dark horse in it, I guess it would be Damian Priest, just because he's been on his own roll since Backlash. But I really think it's LA Knight's time to shine.
And I do tend to agree. Now, we didn't get a secondary choice from Josh. I can ask him after this. But I would also say Damian Priest could be a dark horse of sorts to potentially win. Do I think Finn Balor is going to defeat Seth Rollins immediately and Damian Priest could cash in that Money in the Bank and have a Judgment Day breakdown like we've had with the Bloodline? No. I think that's too quick of booking Seth Rollins out of the world title picture. But I wouldn't hate to see Damian Priest with the briefcase in general, to where he elevates himself now, because it were to seem that, when the Judgment Day first became a thing and no one really knew who was the leader, and then Edge got ostracized from the group, that there wasn't really a leader per se. And if anything, Rhea Ripley has more leadership than the rest of them. But now with Damian Priest having the huge match with Bad Bunny, even with the loss, I would consider him main event Damian Priest. And with Finn Balor now getting a big chance here, big shot at the WWE World Title against Seth Rollins as they run the Universal Title SummerSlam 2016 match back, I think that Damian Priest could sustain as a main eventer, and I think the briefcase could do that. But I would agree with you. I think that the time is now. I think LA Knight is, he's not a young guy. And I think if you're going to pull the trigger on a guy like that while he's hot, while he's over, this is the time to do it. And sure, Priest or Santos Escobar, or you could have had Montez Ford, any of the, not even in the match, but you could have had any of those guys potentially, win this match. But I think you can do that, next year. Or one of those guys that doesn't win this match or isn't in this match could win the Royal Rumble. There's always a new way to elevate new talent that WWE is trying to create. And I think with this new world title and with this Money in the Bank match, and then again, it bookends half the year, and then later in the next half you get Royal Rumble. So every 6 months you get another person that gets to be elevated with a certain match. So quickly before we go to the next topic, Josh, who would your second choice if LA Knight does not walk away with Money in the Bank? Who do you like in this match?
My second choice is also going to have to be Damian Priest. I was very impressed with him in his match with Bad Bunny at Night of Champions. I feel like he has elevated himself in that group to probably the number 3 spot, in my opinion, behind, in terms of entertainment value, behind Rhea and Dominic Mysterio. And I also think he just has that championship look about him as well. And I'm very impressed by his in-ring work. But I still think I'm still going with LA Knight. I don't think it's Damian Priest's time yet. I think that time will come after we have this Judgment Day breakdown. I don't think that will happen anytime soon either, maybe a year or two from now. But I can definitely see him being the male wrestler out of that group to break out into better things like how Rhea Ripley is right now.
And I can agree with that as well. I also do think there's an outside shot of, the rumors have been that JD McDonough could come in and be this new, JD, Judgment Day, be a new guy that could be in that role. And if that were the case, I would love to see Damian Priest elevate to a babyface status. But we'll see where that goes. I, for one, am very excited. I love that we are getting the Bloodline and the Judgment Day as these more than year-long storyline, group-based things that elevate multiple people at the same time and at different times, different peaks, different valleys, and they're all getting massive opportunities that they're honestly knocking out of the park. So it's refreshing to see all these different types of newer talent getting this treatment. And speaking of new stuff, new talent, elevating certain things, I don't know how many video games you guys have played in your lifetime. I know that I've played my fair share. I know that I've played my fair share of wrestling video games. I mean, it goes back to WCW versus NWO World Tour on the N64, ECW Hardcore Revolution on the N64. Of course, everybody had WWF No Mercy on the N64. And, SmackDown versus Raw, Here Comes the Pain and the new 2K games. All the games throughout the years have had their ups and their downs, but a lot of them have been those games that we still talk about today, over 25 years later. WWE has really been the only company putting out a major platform console game year by year. For better or worse, it's been referred to as the Madden of wrestling games because, you get a new one every year. You get new wrestlers. You get, so realistic of graphics. And some people aren't into that. Some people don't need to see the real thing because they watch wrestling every week and they want to just play something that's, fun, and they're playing a video game. They're not playing what's happening in real life, and they would prefer more of an arcade style, especially of those games of yore. Enter Kenny Omega and some of the guys that are really involved deep in the video game world, Adam Cole as well, and that are a part of AEW, because the company Yuke's, who had worked on a lot of video games in the past for WWE up until I believe 2018, they, as well as some other people, have now come through THQ Nordic as well, publishing the new game coming out June 29th, AEW Fight Forever, which is referred to, as I read this description, an arcade-style gameplay with a bunch of different types of matches, I believe 9 at the start, online play, intergender wrestling, a lot of cool mini games. I've seen a lot of interesting footage. I've been told it's easy to pick up and play. I know that there's a lot of blood in the game. I know that there's a bunch of fun mini games to play. You can ride skateboards. You can ride horses. It seems like a lot of fun and not as serious as the other games have been in the past. And another criticism, although I would take it if you're calling it an arcade game, the graphics are as, prim and proper as a WWE 2K game. But if you've played a Madden in 2002 and you loved how the game played, you could care less about what the game looked like then. And now it's almost as if you got to have so many different fingers to hit all these different buttons to throw a pass, but the players look real. So what do you prefer? Donnie, Josh, do you play wrestling video games? Have you played them before? Josh, I know that's rhetorical because we used to play WWE 2K12 and 2K13 all the time in college. Are you excited for this new game? Are you going to get it? Are you interested in trying it? Let's go to you, Josh, first, because I know we've had a little bit of a history with that. I remember playing Fatal 4-Ways with roommates and stuff and just having a blast. Do you prefer an arcade-style game where anybody could just pick it up, or do you want a story-based, long-term driven game with incredible graphics? What do you prefer?
So, in general, for video games, I love the great graphics, the great overall story arcing kind of video games where it basically becomes like an extension of a movie or a long form movie. I like to be entertained that way. I know with this new AEW video game, it's going to be very arcade based. I used to like that back when I was younger. I feel like I've kind of grown out of that. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not putting down people who like arcade video games still. That's them. They can like whatever they like. It's just not for me nowadays. I don't really have that much time to play video games nowadays, so that's why I like to be more entertained with when I do play a video game. For example, like the new Hogwarts Legacy game, or the Call of Duty campaign modes. I do find some of the things in Fight Forever a little bit silly, mostly only because you're basing this video game off of real life. And since you want to try to emulate an arcade game, comparing it to real life just sort of makes it silly, in my opinion. Now, it works for other video games of the fantasy nature because it's easier to suspend disbelief because you don't have a preconceived notion of what that setting or genre should be. I honestly, I think the idea of having Molotov cocktails in this game is really dumb. You're not Victor Reznov in Call of Duty World at War throwing Molotov cocktails out on the Eastern Front in World War II. You're playing a video game in a wrestling ring against each other. You don't see that on TV. That's just my opinion of it. I did get the new WWE 2K video game this year. It was actually the first time I probably bought a wrestling video game in probably like 10 years. I was impressed by it. It was definitely an improvement over the last game I played, which is probably was CM Punk, the one with CM Punk on the cover. Shocking, right? But overall, I'm just not that impressed by it. Will I play it? Will I play it with somebody who owns it? Maybe, probably. Do I think it's going to be a bad video game? No, not necessarily. I'm sure people are going to enjoy it. I'm sure people are going to play it a lot. It's just not for me.
I think you made a lot of good points there, Donnie. I'll hop over to you in a second. Now, you did say Molotov cocktails, and although those didn't happen, you will get an exploding barbed wire death match, which I'm sure has more explosions than what happened in real life. And if you recall, Eddie Kingston did walk out during a match with a gas can and tried to light somebody on fire. So, apples to oranges, I think it's going to be a fun game, but to each their own. And yes, that was WWE 13 that had CM Punk on the cover. So it's been a long time. Donnie, what do you think about AEW Fight Forever, arcade video games in general, and will you buy it?
Okay, so you've come to the right place as far as asking somebody about video games goes, because I've been a gamer since I can remember. Like, since I was ready to walk, I could play video games as far as I'm concerned. I've bought every single wrestling game that's come out other than WWE 2K19 since WWF Warzone on the Nintendo 64. So I'm pretty well versed in what I'm talking about when it comes to this. Couple points Josh made I don't really agree with. First off, we'll go with the graphics over gameplay aspect of it. I understand, casual video game players, they just want everything to look great. Everything's supposed to look like a simulation and everything's supposed to emulate real life. That's not what an arcade game is. It's never going to achieve that standard. If you're constantly judging something by how it looks rather than how it plays, are you really enjoying the game? Is that really all you're concerned with? Cyberpunk came out not too long ago. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. And the game looked incredible, but it played like absolute garbage. So it all comes down to what you're into. No Mercy and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain are probably the consensus number 1 and number 2 best wrestling games of all time if you ask a wrestling video game player what they enjoy playing. I know WCW NWO Revenge is in that conversation too. None of those games are simulation style wrestling games. None of those games looked great for the time that they came out. I'm pretty sure in SmackDown Here Comes the Pain you could jump on top of a helicopter and climb a ladder and like fall to the streets of New York and one of the backstage arenas. SmackDown, Shut Your Mouth, you could jump off the SmackDown fist on top of the arena way. So, it's not always about realism. Sometimes people just want to have fun. The simulation style of the 2K games for WWE, it'll wear you down. It's just monotonous. Sometimes it gets boring. So I'm excited for a little bit of a change. Like you brought up, Ukes is working on the game, and it's their first time working on a wrestling game since 2K19. 2K20 is one of the worst video games I've ever played as far as video games go, not just wrestling games. So it shows that Ukes knows what they're doing, because WWE had to take a whole year off from making a video game to get back into it and get everything together. Another thing I'm excited about is the director of No Mercy and the director of WCW NWO Revenge worked on AEW Fight Forever as the director. I'm not going to attempt to say the man's name because I don't want to butcher it to death, but I'm pretty sure his nickname is Gita. Feel free to correct me if you're listening, if I don't know what I'm talking about. Another thing that excites me is Owen Hart's going to be in a video game for the first time since 2004, and he's always been one of my favorites, so I'm excited to, get him in there with guys like Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson and just see how that plays out. And then a couple of the features, like the skateboard you mentioned, you could break the LED board on the ramp when you throw somebody into it. You can German suplex into the barricade and break the barricade. And they're bringing back the in-game shop that like WWE No Mercy used to have, and Here Comes the Pain had, where you could purchase content with money you earn in the game rather than buying DLC or, unlocking it behind a My Faction. They want to keep everything hidden away in that mode now because they want people to buy cards and play it. Let me tell you something, 2K, if anybody's listening, the mode sucks. Get rid of it. Nobody likes it. But yeah, I'm excited to buy it. I'm excited to play it. It's nice to have a change of pace. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, man. And I love that we're doing Triple Threat Theater because you guys have both sides of the coin there. And I tend to lean more or less to Donnie. However, Josh makes a lot of good points. It's just the games that I remember having the most fun. Not necessarily were I think it's a cop out for me to say that the games I grew up with were the ones that I love the most because I played them the most and that's what I remember the best. But I love the WWE 2K, 12, 13, 14. Those games were great as well. The skateboard, the LED stuff, all those types of things remind me of because I had a GameCube growing up and I had WWE Day of Reckoning, which you could do intergender matches, you could do Big Show versus Stacy Keibler in a Hell in a Cell match. Like just the versatility of the game made it like fun. It was an open world in a way. Like I could come up with whatever I wanted. I could book whatever I wanted. And it just looked fun. It looked great. You could throw people through the announce tables. There's a lot of things that are breakable, like the LED board now. Like I like that type of versatility in a game. However, I do like the serious nature and how great the new games look. So I'm kind of in the middle, but I for one am really excited to try out Fight Forever. I do believe that I will probably end up purchasing it. If I don't, I'm sure I will know someone that will have it, and I'm going to give it a shot because it looks really entertaining. So fun little topic there. Now the last topic we're going to discuss, because I'd love to do a rapid fire at the end of this show, but before we get to that, the last topic here for Triple Threat Theater. We've got 18 names, 18 different names. Now, there's no particular order. There's no particular reason we picked these people, but they all have some sort of reason that they're on this list. I have come up with a list, along with these two guys, of 18 individuals in professional wrestling that no matter what they did, good or bad, for some reason, it seems that there was a little bit or a lot left on the table. The potential was untapped. They never got to fully realize what they could have been as a wrestler, or their life, for whatever reason, this or that went downhill, or they're out of the business quick. Whatever reasoning that the following talent never made it further or never made it to a level that we couldn't enjoy, I am trying to figure out what you would have thought, what Donnie and Josh, what you guys would have seen potentially play out with some of these guys and girls. I'm going to go over some of the names. I'm going to hope, you guys, I know, have done some research on these guys, and you've also brought up some new names that I'm just going to throw in this list as well. Just give a quick little idea of what could have happened, what you would have loved to have seen happen with these certain individuals going forward had they not, went this way or that way, in or out of the ring. I'm going to just go through the list in order, and I will start with a guy. I'll pick one of you guys to speak, give a little bit of a synopsis of what you saw in them and why, or what rather, you would have loved to have seen them accomplish, or what they could have accomplished that they didn't. So we'll start at the top. Very controversial figure. But this is a guy who, even though in the grand scheme of things, his wrestling career was probably less than 12 years overall combined, yet he is looked at as one of the most legendary professional wrestlers or wrestling characters ever to do it. And that is the Ultimate Warrior. It's a man that lost his life, I would say, way too soon. And it's not that he could have kept wrestling after that, if had his health stayed, but for whatever reason, in multiple companies, he either held up someone for money, the creative was not where it needed to be, he got injured in a certain way where he didn't want to show up. A lot of different incidences with any of these guys, but specifically with Warrior, those come to mind. And even though he's regarded as a legend now, what would you guys have loved to have seen happen, maybe pan out? This is more of like a fantasy of, what could you have seen Ultimate Warrior do had he not left WWE in 91? He left 91, came back in 92, he was gone by 93. What if he had stayed? What would have happened? Would he have ever even went to WCW? So that's the type of thing we're going to go through. Donnie, I'm going to start with you with the Ultimate Warrior. What could you have loved to see him do had he not had any of these issues at hand?
Well, it's safe to say that he's, one of the biggest names in wrestling. The aura of the Ultimate Warrior is just something that everybody sees for themselves. I mean, the man has an award at the Hall of Fame, so that says enough right there. The early exit, to me, it really symbolizes, like what he thought of himself at that point. Because if you demand $550,000 or whatever it was, and you're holding somebody up for that kind of money, and you want to be paid more than Hulk Hogan when he's been carrying the company on his back for such how many years, you're just not a good businessman as far as that concerned. So I don't really blame WWE for parting ways with him. But if he would have stayed, I do believe that he'd have been a multi-time world champion. I'm not going to say he would have won the belt 10 times, but, maybe a couple more times after WrestleMania 6. I could have seen him having maybe one or two lengthy more title runs. But the business starts to transition when he comes back in 1996 to where, we're starting to get more reality-based content as far as characters and in-ring personalities and what people want to do. So I don't really necessarily know if the iteration of the Ultimate Warrior that we saw in the early 90s and the late 80s would have worked in the later 90s with guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin and guys like The Rock and guys like The Undertaker. Do I think that he could have turned it around and maybe changed it? Yeah, I do. I mean, Sting did it for himself, and they're pretty similar characters as far as the way they were presented with the bright colors and, the physique and the hair. And Sting changed his whole aura around as far as character goes. So could have the Warrior done something like that? Yeah, I believe so. It's just unfortunate that we never got to see it.
Josh, I'd like to pass the buck to you. What do you think? What would you have loved to seen Warrior do had he not had the issues that he did? Had he not left WWE so soon? Had he not had back and forth with the company? Had he not even gone to WCW? How different would his career have looked like? Josh, what do you think?
I think he would have won multiple world championships by the time it was all said and done for his career. I think he could have been up there on the level of like Undertaker, Triple H, Mankind in terms of being beloved and in terms of number of championships won. I think he was being lined up to be the next big face of the company after Hulk Hogan. But as you know, due to his attitude issues and due to the whole steroid trials, they kind of had to cut back on the types of performers who are main eventing. They got away from like the big muscular guys to the more technical guys, smaller guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. He had charisma practically unmatched. Just watch any of his promos, and not many wrestlers even back then could match that type of charisma. He probably would have been an all-time great. He is an all-time great now, but his legacy could have been enhanced tenfold if he did not leave the company when he did. I pretty much agree with what Donnie says. He would have had some issues in the late 90s and early 2000s adjusting his character to fit the times, but I think he would have been able to pull something out like Sting did.
I tend to agree with both of you. I really would have loved to have seen an Attitude Era version of the Ultimate Warrior because, as you know, whatever critique you could bring to the guy, I really don't think you can critique the creativity that he had and possessed. And I find it fascinating what he could have pulled off in 97, 98, 99 when the business was rapidly changing. And sure, they still weren't really going back to the young, like the tinier guys, like the Bret Harts and what have you. Those kind of came in and stuck around for a 4 or 5 year period, but they were still very muscular main event talent as we got to 98, 99, 2000. So to me, I would have loved to have seen a jacked Ultimate Warrior somehow pulling off a bloody fight with Austin. I just think that a lot could have been tapped into. And the last thing I'll bring up before we go to another guy, I would have loved in an alternate universe to have seen Warrior stay just another year and go against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9. I think Bret Hart could have gotten a fantastic match out of Warrior, much like Savage did at SummerSlam 92 and at WrestleMania 7. I really think Bret could have pulled one off, and it's unfortunate that we never could see that match unfold. Let's get into another guy. We've got 17 more to go, so I'm going to try to bust through these. Josh, this one hits home to you. CM Punk. I mean, he's still around. God, June 17th, we got a couple more days. He is going to be back in AEW once again, tagging with FTR. He's had his ups, he's had his downs, but he is unequivocally a draw in this business. So, Josh, what else could he have done had he not taken a 7-year sabbatical and left WWE, even though he's still in the business today?
I would have loved to see him and Daniel Bryan go at it at WrestleMania in what would probably be one of the greatest technical matches of all time if it would have happened. He probably would have had multiple title runs left in him. He probably would have had a great feud with Triple H. Basically, I could have seen him being part of the whole Daniel Bryan versus the Authority storyline. Probably more so than. Sorry, he probably would have been more involved once Bryan had his injuries after he won the title, and he probably would have been the main focus of that at the end instead of the Shield and then Seth Rollins turning on Triple H after I think was that before WrestleMania 33 a few years later. I could see CM Punk going into that role as well. I feel like he would have been the face of the company come like 2017, 2018. I feel like he could have had many great matches with members of the Shield, with Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, one-on-one matches for the titles. I felt like he left a lot on the table. I felt like he could have put over way more people down the line, especially with the Shield, especially with Bray Wyatt, especially with a lot of other folks. So I feel like he left way too early than when he needed to leave.
Donnie, I'll ask you, what more could CM Punk have done in WWE?
I'm gonna agree with Josh here on this one, but before we get into that, I just want to say from the last time we were on this show, I told you so. I told you he was coming back. And I'm just going to say this. Had he not left in 2014, he more than likely would have been the face of the company going into the years forward with what happened to Edge and his injury and what happened to Daniel Bryan and his injury, things like that. Cena making a transition to Hollywood, like they could have really used Punk in this time period and then you also had guys that were just coming in, fresh guys that they were bringing in. They brought in Kevin Owens, they brought in AJ Styles, they brought in Samoa Joe, Drew McIntyre comes back, Bobby Lashley comes back. You have all these names returning to the company around this time period too, or at least somewhere in there, who CM Punk really could have had, I think, classic feuds with. But it's unfortunate what happened. Things, they don't always go the way you want them to go, and he leaves, takes 7 years off and comes to AEW, and I think, we've had some terrible things happen in AEW as far as CM Punk is concerned, but if we can right this ship the way I think we're going to, there's a lot of meat left on this CM Punk bone in AEW. You have Kenny Omega, you have Adam Cole, you have Bryan Danielson, you have Claudio Castagnoli, you have another feud with Samoa Joe potentially on the table soon. So I think there's a lot of promising things on the horizon for CM Punk.
I tend to agree with both of you, and as I try to wrap up this particular guy in the topic, I firmly believe that had CM Punk stayed, now would it have been what he wanted? Would it have been the exact match that he would have wanted? I don't know, because I really do think the trigger should have been pulled on a triple threat at Mania 29 instead of having Rock Cena 2. I firmly believe that had CM Punk not left, he would have eventually gotten that WrestleMania main event. Now, if he goes to WWE at any point in his career, whatever's left, he could get the main event of WrestleMania, but I'm sure it would be for night one, and he wouldn't be satisfied. Let's go into another interesting talent. Now, some of these, I'm actually going to rattle off the next three because they all have certain traits. They got really, really big in certain ways. Two out of the three were in the independent scene. One, not on the independent scene, but NXT, which I know it's not the independents, but when you're not necessarily on Raw or SmackDown every week, you might not have the viewers that you might see
week to week if you're on Raw or SmackDown. So I would say in regards to independence, I would say he was as close to the main roster as you could possibly get. But with whatever happened and the reasons that he's not there now, I'm going to lump him in with the other two guys. So I'm going to give a 3-person answer here because these are kind of muddied for me. Teddy Hart, the Velveteen Dream, and Marty Scurll. These guys all had certain promise. Teddy Hart's an unbelievable athlete. Velveteen Dream's charisma was through the roof and really, really was super hot and super over in NXT. And Marty Scurll, at a point, was one of the hottest independent talents in the world. He was a part of the Bullet Club. He sold umbrellas. He had a lot of stuff going on. But be that as it may, all three of those guys really aren't doing much in the world of wrestling. I think Teddy Hart's still doing wrestling consistently, but controversy finds these guys pretty easily. What do you guys think about all three of these guys? Who could you have seen doing more? I personally think Velveteen Dream had an incredible ceiling, and he never got close to it. So, Donnie, we'll start with you this time. What do you think about Teddy Hart, Marty Scurll, and the Velveteen Dream?
Well, we'll start with Teddy Hart first and just go down the list. But the thing that says it all about Teddy is that he was signed. He's the youngest person ever to sign with WWE, and I believe he was either 17 or 18 at the time. So that tells you what they thought of him as far as potential goes. Now, did his last name have something to do with it? Maybe so. But as far as in ring goes, the dude was unbelievable. Like, he took the style of Owen and Brett and completely made it his own and incorporated things from Lucha Libre and the high-flying style that we see today that a lot of guys are trying to emulate. He was one of the first people to really bring that style to the forefront. And I feel like he could have maybe possibly been a world champion in some of the lesser-known companies, maybe like Ring of Honor or Impact. He could have maybe had a steady mid-card run as far as WWE is concerned had he got his stuff together, but it's unfortunate the way things fell for him. Marty Scurll, it tells you how important that man was to Ring of Honor with the amount of money they gave him and then making him head booker and trying to keep him there for as long as humanly possible. But I foresee Marty Scurll would probably be in AEW right now, either with the Elite or maybe doing his own thing, with his Clockwork Orange style gimmick, which was pretty unique. I like that. I haven't really seen much of his in-ring work. I need to go back and watch some of it, but from what I hear, he's actually pretty good in the ring. So some potential there with him. I think he would have found a spot in AEW. And then the Velveteen Dream is probably the biggest waste of potential on this list because they've been trying forever to have somebody have this eccentric style gimmick and for it to get over. And for some reason, they just kept hitting a wall. But finally, with this guy, it seemed like he finally put it all together and had everything going for him and just couldn't get it together when it mattered the most. I feel like he probably would have been NXT champion at a point and maybe had a nice Intercontinental title run or U.S. title run on the main roster, and that probably would have been his ceiling. But we've seen guys go into the Hall of Fame for less, so maybe the Velveteen Dream could have done the same.
Very well said, Donnie. I'll go to you, Josh. What do you think of Marty Scurll, the Velveteen Dream, and Teddy Hart?
I know Donnie said that Teddy Hart was the youngest person signed in WWE history, and that goes to show how much talent, how much potential they saw in him. But I also think that was a huge detriment to his development. We were all 18 at one point. We all know what we did, how we acted, what kind of attitude we had, etc. You're not emotionally mature enough to handle something as big as working with the biggest wrestling company in the world at 18 in that type of capacity. I feel like if they would have signed him when he was older, maybe in his mid-20s, I feel like he could have had a good run with WWE. Maybe he could have had a mid-card title run, tag team title run. I don't think he was world championship material even with his last name. And I also feel like his last name could have been a detriment to him as well because they held him to a higher standard in the ring and outside the ring that he just couldn't uphold. I feel like getting the Velveteen Dream now, I feel like he had a ton of potential. His ceiling was a mile high, if not more. I felt like he could have had like the charisma of Goldust combined with the aura of Undertaker and this gimmick that he created. It's unfortunate what happened to him. It's unfortunate. Well, more so, it's unfortunate that the situation happened where he couldn't make the main roster. I felt like he did have world championship material, even though he never won the NXT title. I feel like he, at the end of the day, he could have been like this, like I said, this gold dust type of wrestler. And for the Marty Scurll, I felt like he would have been in AEW by now. He'd been with doing the stuff with the Elite, same thing that Omega, the Young Bucks, and Adam Page are currently doing. I know Donnie said that New Japan kept him there and gave him the head booking job. That's how much they appreciated his wrestling mind. And I felt like him being in AEW could have led to some better quality product over the past year when they had all these injuries and all these suspensions. I feel like the program would have been way more polished with Marty in charge, especially after Cody Rhodes left. I felt like after Cody left, they kind of lost their creative edge. Because I know Cody definitely helped out Tony a lot in that aspect. I feel like Marty could have stepped into those shoes after Cody left and righted the company ship during those injuries and suspensions.
Yeah, I neglected to bring up that Marty was a booker for Ring of Honor, and they did. They threw a lot of money at the guy to keep him there, and I do think he has a creative mind. It'll be interesting to see if he ever gets back in the good graces of North American wrestling again. That's higher than all of our pay grades. Let's get into a few more. I've decided, I said 18, but I like to now, I'm kind of like grouping these in as the more I look at them. For specific reasons. Let's tap into a few more here. Let's get into a couple of big ones. Let's go to one of the most misuse. Is misuse the word, or is it uncreative, or is it lack of creative direction? I don't know what you want to call what this guy has gone through since being, incredibly hyped. Then a lot of stuff happens. A lot of good stuff happens. He gets so close to the top. He even reaches the top at times. Yet it still seems like WWE doesn't know what to do with him. We're talking about the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Donnie, start with you. What could Bray Wyatt have been? What, he still could come back and reinvent himself again. We all don't know. He's still, to my knowledge, under contract with WWE. But I'd be lying, and we'd all be lying if we thought that, oh, well, they've gotten the most out of Bray Wyatt. They've gotten so much out of him, and yet I still think there is so much left to be desired. What do you think, Donnie?
Well, as you guys know, Bray Wyatt is one of my favorite performers in wrestling. Looking forward to him coming back whenever that may be. I've been reading that he's dealing with some kind of illness, so, wish him speedy recovery if that is the case. Don't wish that on anybody. But as far as everybody we're going to talk about today, potential-wise, I don't feel like there's a higher ceiling than Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt is everything the WWE could look for as possible as far as markability is concerned. He has the character, he has the promos, he has the lights, the music, the presentation, everything that you want. The only thing that he's lacking, in my opinion, is ability in the ring. He doesn't always put on 5-star classics, but we've seen with guys like Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan that he's capable of putting on entertaining matches. It's all about the right dance partner. I know that the Fiend masks are supposedly destroyed, or, they got rid of them whenever he left WWE or whatever, but to me, at this point, when Bray comes back, it has to be as the Fiend. The Fiend was top 3, top 2 in merchandise sales when he was that character in WWE. They misused that character so poorly toward the end of its run. I understand why he doesn't want to do it again, but the fans are clamoring for it. Everybody loves the Fiend. Everybody wants to see the Fiend. You could bring back Uncle Howdy if you want to, or do whatever you want with him, lock him away in the closet again, whatever. But please bring back the Fiend. We all want to see it.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Josh, what do you think? I personally thought that the SummerSlam 2019 entrance of The Fiend was honestly, and I mean this in the best possible way, Undertaker-esque. The Undertaker had so many supernatural things happen. To me, most notably, Royal Rumble 94, where he was in a casket match with Yokozuna. He gets put in the casket. He loses the match, yet lightning strikes, and he then ascends to the ceiling, to the heavens. That was supernatural. That was crazy. That was the WWF in 94. The Fiend's entrance at SummerSlam 2019 was scintillating. It was raw. It was incredible. And I was like, I can't believe that WWE not only have had this guy for so long and didn't tap into this, but what could they do with this? And then he proceeded to have red Hell in a Cell cage matches and a match presented by Mountain Dew that everybody panned. So, Josh, what do you think? Could Bray Wyatt have ever done? What could he do? Is there anything left?
I think he still has at least one more world title run in him eventually, if he's able to recover from whatever injury or illness that he currently has right now. Like Donnie said, he's one of the best on the mic. His presentation is phenomenal, and the character is outright amazing. I think what Bray Wyatt's problem is WWE does not put a filter on some things that he does. I don't feel that there's a good direction for him for any sort of long-term or just overall storytelling. Bray Wyatt's main thing that he does correct is the presentation of the character. The little things like the entrances, the his whole Firefly Funhouse. Sorry, I forgot the word for a second.
It's all right. It's been too long since he's been on TV.
Yeah. Those little things that don't require long-term storytelling or long-term booking, he's phenomenal in. If he can just get on the same page as some of these creative writers to forge a path forward into a long-term storyline direction where he wants to go, while picking up those creative presentations that Bray Wyatt is mostly known for, I think there's definitely a future for him in WWE as a world champion, or even just putting on some sort of stellar soap opera type storyline that we have seen with the Bloodline for the past 3 years. There's potential there. It shouldn't go to waste until all the gas has been let out of the pipe.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I think there's still so much more that they could do. I do agree. I think they could do one more run with him. It's just, he's almost, no, it's not the same reasons, but him coming back, it's the Fiend. We got Uncle Howdy. Like, they give a new wrinkle. It's I kind of put it in the same ballpark as CM Punk. Like, he's coming back again. I have faith that they can do stuff with him, but it's like, how much do they have for him? What will he be willing to do? Will they mess that up? Will he mess it up? And then with Bray Wyatt, it's like, how many more creative things can he come up with that hit? I mean, his Cape Fear gimmick was incredible. Then the Fiend and just Bray Wyatt in general. Like, there's so many different avenues that he's done, and for it to, I hate to say that it's gone to waste, but it's been so stop and start for the better part of 10 years that, man, it's got to be frustrating for him. And the worst part of it is that I don't think that the same type of character could be pulled off in AEW. Bray Wyatt is such a WWE like character. Like I said, The Undertaker comes to mind with the supernatural entrances and what have you. I just think it's very, very WWE how they present him. And it's the best way to do it. But it's almost as if, well, we got it. Now what? Like, you get the moment, but there's nothing else. You lose it all after one moment. So we'll see what happens with him. We've got 12 more names as we are trying to, pound through these. Now, I'm going to save 5 of them for the end because they are deceased. So we'll try to run through these other ones kind of quickly. I'm going to kind of just rattle off a name. I'm going to give you guys a quick 30 seconds. Let's hear what you got. Josh, I'm going to start with you. Austin Aries. What do you think about his potential and what could have been and what didn't happen? Josh?
I think for Austin Aries, I don't think there is that much potential from outside from what we have seen in WWE. He had a nice run in TNA as a world champion for Option C. And outside of that, I don't really see that much of an entertainment factor from him. He was lucky to be in WWE when he was. He kind of wasted the opportunity. That's on him. Outside of that, he should be lucky for what he did in the business.
Donnie, what about you? Austin Aries, and then I'll come at you with another name.
I'll just lay it out like this and be honest about it. Austin Aries is an asshole. Like, you get opportunity after opportunity, even in WWE. Now, granted, I get the cruiserweight division wasn't exactly the greatest thing in the world, but there's another guy that we're going to talk about on this list that turned that around and made it work for him. So why couldn't he do the same? His heavyweight title run in Impact was cool. Like, it was nice to see somebody create a loophole to get to the world heavyweight title through Destination X and the X Division Championship and make it mean a little bit more. But I agree with Josh. Like, he pretty much reached his ceiling.
I tend to agree. I thought he was really good in TNA, but that says a lot. It's the same with Bray Wyatt. I couldn't see Bray Wyatt in AEW or anywhere else, and I really couldn't see Austin Aries succeeding anywhere else. Now, again, the cruiserweight title was what it was, but I'll transition into what you brought up, Donnie, and I'll go straight back to you, Donnie. Enzo Amore. You want to talk about in ring? He's good, but on the mic, carrying. Anybody that's on him, anybody he's feuding with, anybody he's talking to is so much better off having Enzo Amore as a mouthpiece, as a guy going against on the mic. He's elevating everything by talking. So many guys wish that they had this type of charisma, yet Enzo Amore, I still think, did not get all that he could have gotten out of that character for one reason or another, and now he's not really in the main limelight, as it were. Big Bill is in AEW, but it seems as if they've kind of gone away from what they used to be, which was one of the hottest acts, comparable to me to the New Age Outlaws that we had seen in a very long time in regards to owning the crowd, capturing the audience, keeping their attention, and now you get teams like the Acclaimed to do that. But Enzo Amore had such a high ceiling. Donnie, where do you think he could have done with more time, in WWE, or had he had some time maybe in AEW? What do you think Enzo Amore could have accomplished?
I'll go ahead and say this right now. I believe firmly, and I'll stand by this, that Enzo Amore should be on national television right now on a wrestling program, whether it's WWE or AEW. There's a spot for this man on the card somewhere, because his charisma is unmatched, maybe by anybody wrestling right now, as far as what he can say on the microphone. This man's one-liners are out of this world. I've never heard anything like some of the things he said on national television. But, was he ever going to be WWE champion? No, he didn't have the body for that. He didn't have the height for that. He wasn't the size that they typically look for. But he could have found himself a nice niche in the mid-card. He took the cruiserweight division and elevated it from being something that nobody wanted to watch to where he's cooking the entire division in a segment on TV. Look it up on YouTube. It's one of the best segments you'll see as far as promos go. But I would love to personally see him go to AEW and reunite with Big Cass, or Big Bill as he's known as now. Have those segments like you said with the Acclaimed, or maybe do something with the Young Bucks, FTR. Like, there's so many good tag teams in AEW. I feel like those guys could have a program with right now, and it's unfortunate that he's not on TV.
And let's be real, if there was some sort of backstage thing that's keeping Enzo Amore from going to AEW, it's not as if AEW has no problems backstage. But let's transition. Josh, what do you think about Enzo Amore? Could you imagine an Enzo Amore and Max Caster back and forth on the mic? What do you think Enzo's ceiling is?
honestly, for someone who has that much potential on the mic and that much charisma, I felt like he could have had a small reign as world champion in WWE. He's a he's a great not great performer, but he's a passable performer in the ring, and the fact that he can get the crowd under his spell very easily lends him out to be a great marketing tool for WWE. I feel like they wasted the opportunity to present him in a serious light. I think he should never left the tag team with Big Cass in WWE. I feel like putting him, although he did have some great moments in the cruiserweight division, like Donnie said, when he just ripped the whole division to shreds, I feel like he would have been better served as a Big Cass's tag team partner. And then when you won him to main event or get that world title run, you could have done something like Kofi Kingston did against Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania 35. You give him the title at WrestleMania, have a short run with him for a few months, and have him lose at like SummerSlam or something. You get your money out of Enzo Amore as world champion, and they did not seize on that opportunity when they could have.
I tend to agree there. I do think that he did elevate the cruiserweight title in that division for a little bit. And look, I'd much rather have a cruiserweight division than have the 24/7 title, because if it's not going to be a hardcore title that you can really, I just swear that they had such gold with the original hardcore title being the 24/7, and then just calling a title the 24/7 title and not taking it to, like, I get that they had certain ideas of, well, you can do it backstage in a hotel room and this and that, but I feel like they still never tapped into the fun that you could have put forth with that. And I know that's not what we're talking about, but I'm saying the cruiserweight title was something that I think could have been more, and now that's nothing either. So Enzo Amore, for his stature, you say that he could have had a title run. I think guys on the mic can carry themselves to a title run. I really do. But might never see that. So I have a couple more guys left. I separated them into 3 groups. We'll start with this first group. Let's go to 2 guys that for different reasons never got to the promised land necessarily. Now, one was tragic and never got there by way of a car accident. The other got there in TNA, but for about a year and a half, I honestly thought there's no one hotter than this guy. It's a no doubt gimmick. There's no way he's not going to win the world title. He won Money in the Bank, but for one reason or another, it never panned out, and he never got that WWE title. He went to TNA and did some stuff. It was successful there, TNA World Champion, but let's just be real, it's not the same, because Austin Aries was TNA champion. What did that ever give him? So 2 guys, 2 separate talents here. Again, both kind of different in the realm, but they both were so close, I thought. One was before our time. So we've got Magnum TA, who recently had a Dark Side of the Ring, which I have not gotten to watch yet, but I do know the story quite well. And it was before my time, but he was literally so close to really popping off and probably becoming one of the biggest baby faces in the NWA in the late 80s, and could have really been a huge face to the Ric Flair heel of it all, and everything wrestling could have been drastically changed had Magnum TA not gotten in that car accident. So he never got to achieve what he could have achieved, in my opinion. The other is Mr. Kennedy in WWE. The gimmick of announcing your name like a boxing announcer, with the voice that he had, with the stature of his body compared with him doing sentons off the top rope, and his charisma was through the roof. He never got to where I thought he could go either. He won Money in the Bank, but because of certain things that happened to him, that went away, and he never was the same. He went to TNA, like I said. So Mr. Kennedy in WWE and Magnum TA, 2 that never got there, in my opinion. Let's start with you, Donnie. What are your thoughts on these 2 guys? They're kind of two separate generations, but I think similar in the way that they were so close.
I'll start with Magnum TA first, and I just want to say I did watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode featuring him. Highly recommend Dark Side of the Ring to anybody who's interested in wrestling history, not just his episode, but all episodes. I think it speaks for itself when you listen to people talk about this guy and they name him as pretty much the man that was being groomed to take over the NWA for Ric Flair. If they say that you're Ric Flair's heir apparent and you could be the NWA's version of Hulk Hogan, what else can be said about that? I mean, he was primed to take over the NWA and the wrestling industry in the 80s, and it's unfortunate that he got into an accident because I think he could have been a big star and maybe help the NWA, maybe compete with larger companies. But we'll never know. As far as Mr. Kennedy goes, his WWE run's unfortunate because he had a unique presentation that like nobody had ever seen before. Nobody ever announced himself like that. And his voice, just the way that he said it, was so unique and really got it over. His in-ring work was okay. The injury after Money in the Bank was kind of unfortunate. He had to give up the briefcase. And then I know apparently something happened with him and Randy Orton in a match after he came back from his injury and Randy Orton got hurt. And that's pretty much what is rumored to be the lead to his release. I don't know how true that is or not. But I don't feel like he really would have ever gotten anywhere. He maybe would have gotten like a one-time title run with the title with Money in the Bank if he cashed it in, but like he would have been like a Jinder Mahal or a Jack Swagger type of champion. He really only would have got maybe one or two runs with the belt, and that's it.
Josh, I'll cross over to you. You like that pun? I'll cross over to you. Mr. Kennedy, I thought he had so much hype and promise, and it just didn't get to the level that I thought. And like Donnie said, if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, you see how close Magnum TA was close to becoming the NWA's heir apparent for Hulk Hogan. Now we all know Sting became something akin to that, but he was more of a Ultimate Warrior, high-powered electric babyface, but not this massive cut out of stone guy like Hulk Hogan was, and Magnum TA was. So could have been a lot different for him. What do you think about these two guys, Josh?
I think the biggest missed opportunity for Mr. Kennedy wasn't the fact that he missed out on a world title run, wasn't the fact that he missed out on a cash-in, but the fact that he missed out on being Mr. McMahon's illegitimate child in that storyline from, I think, what was it, like 2007? Was that it?
I cannot believe
yes,
you brought this up right
I think it was 2007. No, it is funny that you bring it up, but I mean, look, working with Vince McMahon's no slouch. It was right there for him.
Yeah, and I think McMahon was giving him the rub into what would have eventually led into a world title run for him. He was great on the mic. He had a very unique gimmick. You don't see very many wrestlers feud with the ring announcer like he did with Tony Chimel, and I kind of missed that aspect of him as well. It's unfortunate that he had injuries derail his career and some other issues as well. His run in TNA was not the same. I know he was in Aces and Eights during his time there, and he did win a world title, I believe, one time, but it's not the same as Mr. Anderson is not the same as Mr. Kennedy, in my opinion. Magnum TA, he could have been the next big thing in NWA/WCW/Jim Crockett Promotions, whatever you want to call it. It's unfortunate we missed a lot of matches with him from the late 80s and early 90s. It would have been really cool to see him go up against like Sting in the early 90s. And against whoever else was in WCW at that time. He definitely was being groomed to be the next face of WCW after Ric Flair. He did have a great feud with Ric Flair right before he got into that car accident, and also he had a great feud with the Koloffs before the accident as well. If you ever want to look up the promos, I would suggest to look those up and watch them. That should be mandatory viewing for any sort of wrestling fan, in my opinion, at least. I'm glad he's doing okay, though. It's unfortunate he was never able to get back into the ring after that awful accident. It makes you wonder if that accident would have happened maybe in the 90s instead of the 80s. He would have been back in the ring just based upon better medical technology at the time. I also do think he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I think he's probably one of the top acts from pre-Attitude Era that has not been inducted in yet.
I think he should be as well. I think there's a lot of people that should be in there that either are not in there, or people that are in there that may, they could be in there, but they should be second to some other people. We could get to that on another episode, but for now, we've got two more little groups of talent here that I'd like to discuss in this particular topic. Let's go over three guys who, let's be real, they've all had success. One was a world champion. One was a tag team champion that honestly, could have had it all, but is more remembered for who his partner was. And then the third guy, wow, you want to talk in-ring psychology. You want to talk how to make wrestling believable. This guy went above and beyond to do that. And, in the same breath, hurt himself, hurt his life, hurt his family, hurt people around him by his actions and what he did. Thank goodness that he is now back in the good graces and is probably doing better than a lot of the guys from his era are doing. But those guys in order: Jeff Hardy, Marty Jannetty, Jake Roberts. Jeff Hardy, ups and downs galore. His career has been unbelievable. He was a world champion. He's more remembered as doing the crazy moments at WrestleMania 16, 17, certain SummerSlams, all throughout his career doing all these insane bumps. He's now in AEW, looking better off. His ups and downs have been well documented. We don't need to get into any of that here. As a longtime wrestling fan, he broke in 93, 94. He's been at this for almost 30 years. Loved seeing him perform. He's obviously an inspiration to so many wrestlers that are doing it today. Marty Jannetty, again, part of the Rockers, but Shawn Michaels became arguably one of the biggest stars in the history of the business. And now people, every time there's a tag team with two pretty popular stars, it's who's going to be the Marty Jannetty? Who's going to be the failure? Who's going to be the guy that can't cut up to the guy that's really the star? And as unfortunate as that is, Marty Jannetty was that unfortunate scapegoat to be that. Now, he might have brought some of that onto himself, but be that as it may, that's where he stands right now in the history realm. Nevertheless, I do think he had an interesting career. And then Jake Roberts, like I said, my God, you want to learn how to do promos, you want to cut promos, you want to make wrestling believable. Watch a Jake Roberts promo. Watch Jake Roberts promo before his match with Ted DiBiase at WrestleMania 6. You will probably not find a better, more unnerving promo from a wrestler that's so believable. You almost couldn't believe that it was, quote, fake, that they're not really going out to hurt each other. He clearly, just like Jeff Hardy and Jannetty, had his problems inside and outside of the ring. Firing, came back, did this and that. Now he's in a better place. I do believe he's still under AEW contract. If not, he's also under a Legends deal with WWE because they keep pumping out Jake Roberts action figures. All three of these guys, in their own way, are legends. I do think Marty Jannetty has an interesting history that I could conceive him as a legend who's a part of the Rockers, but all three have had their problems. We'll start with you, Josh. A little bit on each guy. Jeff Hardy, Marty Jannetty, Jake Roberts. What could they have done more had they not had these little pitfalls along the way? Specifically, Jake Roberts never had a world title. Do you think he's one of those guys that should have had it?
Honestly, I don't think Jake Roberts was ever going to win a world title with or without his issues. I think he was more of a guy who was a heel and was going to just put over talent, either in the ring or through his promo work. I don't think he had the look back, especially back then when I think looks matter way more than they do now. I feel like if anything, he would have either been a good mid-card champion, like an IC title type of guy, or a transitional world champion where he held the title for a month. I think his character works better without a world title. For Jeff Hardy, I also think he would have been the same where he is now. He's a great in-ring performer. His stunts in the ring are off the charts. I think he's also a victim of how he looks as well. He doesn't look like the type of world champion that can carry the company or be the face of the company. I feel like people would always see him as a mid-carder who dabbles in the world title scene whenever there's an opportunity to put someone else over. Nevertheless, he has had a stellar career. He's won multiple titles in TNA, WWE, Ring of Honor. I don't think he's won anything in AEW yet, but I would not be surprised if the Hardys do get a tag team title run in AEW at some point. And the last one you said was Marty Jannetty. Was that correct, Juice?
Yes, that was correct. Marty Jannetty is the other guy I mentioned.
And it's unfortunate for him. I think he had the talent, but like you said, Juice, there's always a Marty Jannetty to a Shawn. There's always someone who's going to be put more over than somebody else. And unfortunately for Marty, it was him. Shawn Michaels had the look. Shawn Michaels had the better in-ring technique than Marty. Not everyone can be elevated like Shawn did. And unfortunately for Marty, that was him. He was a one-time IC champion, and he was a one-time World Tag Team champion with 1-2-3 Kid. He should be happy to get those title runs when he did. But like I said, not everyone can be elevated like Shawn was.
Good points across the board. Donnie, I present it to you quickly, not, no rush, but Jake Roberts, could he have been a world champion? Marty Jannetty, what if he turned out to be the Shawn Michaels? And Jeff Hardy, he was the Shawn Michaels of his group, yet Matt Hardy is still wrestling pretty consistently, and Jeff is not. What are your thoughts on all three of these guys?
Okay, I'm going to start off with Jake the Snake Roberts first. I'm going to agree a lot with what you said in the opening part of bringing him into the segment. If you want to learn how to do a promo and you want to study in-ring and outside the ring psychology, I don't think there's anybody better to show you how to do it than Jake the Snake Roberts. He's inspired so many guys. A guy that we talked about earlier on this list was Bray Wyatt. I know a few other guys, said they got promo work from him. They all go to Jake Roberts to see, how to cut a promo and get advice or just research old tape. I think it's criminal that Jake Roberts never won a title in WWE, World Heavyweight or Intercontinental otherwise. The fact that he never got a title run is a little bit of a shame to me. But I agree with Josh in the aspect of Jake is also one of those guys that didn't need a title. He made it to the Hall of Fame without winning one, so that says everything right there. It's unfortunate the things he had to go through. I feel like he could have had a more lengthy career and maybe carved a niche for himself in the mid card or helped elevate younger talent. But I think that was his ceiling ultimately. As far as Marty Jannetty goes, his legacy is going to be that, well, you are the Jannetty. That's about what Marty Jannetty contributed to the wrestling business. The biggest memory I have of him is getting thrown through the barbershop window. It sucks when you have a tag team partner who's going to go on to become arguably one of the greatest talents in professional wrestling history. But to me, the guy just didn't really bring much to the table. Without Shawn Michaels, what was he? He was a charisma vacuum. He really couldn't talk. He was okay in the ring, but if you have no presentation, you're really not doing anything for yourself. And then last on the list is probably, I'm going to say, arguably the most accomplished talent wrestler on the list as far as accomplishments go. And Jeff Hardy's that guy. I mean, he has multiple world title reigns in WWE and TNA. I believe he's an 8 or 9-time WWE Tag Team Champion, Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion, TNA Tag Team Champion. He's a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no question. What I would like to see from Jeff Hardy in the future going forward is his health first and foremost. I wish Jeff would just, stay on the straight and narrow and try to get his life together and not have another setback. And if wrestling is what is causing that, then hopefully he gets his farewell tag team title run with his brother and rides off into the sunset. Because if that's the case, then Jeff needs to save himself and his family first and foremost. And please, internet wrestling community, for the love of God, stop booking the Hardy Boys in fantasy ladder matches. It's over. It's over, guys. I'm sorry to tell you it's over.
Well, you heard it here first on the Juice Box. Donnie says it's over for ladder matches in the Hardy Boys. 20-year run. It's been fun. Let's go into the last 5 guys and girls of this specific topic. I've selected them as last because, unfortunately, none of these individuals are with us anymore. All of them, arguably, if not already, I do believe, unless they're all are in the Hall of Fame. If they're not, they will be. I've been talking about everybody, so I'm assuming they all are. I just can't think at the moment. But these 5 are legends in their own right. There's definitely could have been more on the table for most of them, if not all of them. But we'll start off with the top here. Scott Hall, Brian Pillman, Owen Hart, Yokozuna, and Chyna. Now, Scott Hall, legendary. The Outsiders, Razor Ramon, the NWO. You know this guy. He's been around forever. Passed away recently in the last couple of years. And it was very unfortunate how young he really was. Brian Pillman, again, he died in 1997, almost 26 years ago now. Just a real shame. The talent that he had, the charisma that he had, for nothing else, but just a great, fun, entertaining character. And you really, I mean, it's a gimmick, but it's not. He really was a loose cannon. Not a lot of people knew what they were going to get when you talked to Brian Pillman. And that's exactly what Brian Pillman wanted. And that's why he got to where he needed to be. Owen Hart, again, watch Dark Side of the Ring. Watch any documentary about the incident. We're not going to get into that. But, be that as it may, man, as a guy whose brother was literally one of the best wrestlers in the history of the industry, for someone to come up and literally be in those shoes to try to fill as the little brother, Owen Hart did so much for himself. You talk the WrestleMania 10 match against Bret, the SummerSlam 94 match against Bret, even the unfortunate SummerSlam 97 match with Austin, the Slammies. There's so many good things that Owen Hart did in his career. It's incredibly unfortunate and very frustrating that it had to be taken away from us so soon. Yokozuna also was not long for this world, but God, he made an impact. We talk about the bloodline these days with all the guys that are in there, the Solo Sikoa and the Usos, and Roman Reigns, of course, The Rock, all these guys that have been literally a part of this Samoan bloodline, and Yokozuna was one of those. He's one of the, I'd say, forefathers now, again, that were over 30 years since he came into the WWE, but quickly rose to prominence in 93, won the world title, great matches and feuds with The Undertaker, really interesting stuff. He tagged with Owen Hart, as a matter of fact, but his weight obviously got to him, and he passed away, I do believe, in the year 2000, if not 99. But it just another great talent gone too soon. And then Chyna, a trailblazer, a literal trailblazer for women in the business of professional wrestling, opening a lot of avenues for women when they really weren't there, in a time where women's wrestling was not only not present, but it was looked down upon. In spite of that, came the Attitude Era, of where bra and panties matches and evening gown matches and all these things, kind of putting forth the bodies of women instead of the work that the women were doing. And that was the time, of course, but in that time, a believable, jacked, could kick every guy on the roster's ass if she wanted to, came in, Chyna, and really changed the game. And I think a lot of talent that you see now were, kind of entertained at a point, but really looked up to Chyna. You look at some wrestlers like Beth Phoenix, Raquel Rodriguez, some of these talents that you get that same type of vibe, that just powerhouse vibe in a woman performer. And I really don't think that some of these women would have been there without a woman like China to really set that tone and make wrestling for women a little bit more serious than the T and the A. And, you know, it's just another unfortunate way that her life turned and ended. So I ask you guys, we'll start with you, Donnie, all 5 of these individuals. I don't expect you to go into great detail. We know all these 5 are Hall of Famers in their own right. But what could have been, what more could have been done? Scott Hall, could he have won a world title? Brian Pillman and Owen Hart, how much more could they have offered to the business? Yokozuna, man, had he lived even, 10 to 15 more years, could he have been around for some of these guys just to train them, like in the Usos and some of these guys in the family? And then China, of course, had she had her life in better standing over the last few years, could she be someone? I look at a lot of these guys we've been talking about, deceased or not, if they were just in the right frame of mind, they could have been great trainers in AEW, in WWE, in NXT, even on the independent scene. And I think China could have been one of those. Donnie, let's hear what you got about all 5 of these individuals. They're all great in their own right, but unfortunately they're not here anymore. What are your thoughts?
We'll start with the bad guy. We'll start with Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. I do feel like, if he had it all together, he would have been a world heavyweight champion. He could have been one in WWE or in WCW. Had he stayed in WWE as Razor Ramon, I'm about 100% certain he would have got a WWE title run, but then we would have never gotten the NWO and what we know now. So, it's unfortunate, but hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Go to Yokozuna next, the original tribal chief, in my opinion. I know he was presented as being Japanese and what's the word I'm looking for here? A sumo wrestler. He was presented as a sumo wrestler, but he was part of the Samoan dynasty. And had he been able to, lose weight and get down to size a little bit, take better care of himself, I feel like he could have won the heavyweight title a few more times. If he'd have been around today, I feel like he would have contributed in some way or another to the Bloodline storyline, as a manager or as a mouthpiece, just some kind of intricate part into that storyline. Owen Hart, that's a little bit of a soft spot for me. That's a rough one because Owen's one of my childhood favorites. I always felt that Owen was better than Bret as far as in-ring ability was concerned. He just didn't have enough time to tie together the storytelling aspect of it, I believe, the in-ring psychology aspect of it. But Owen would have been a multi-time world heavyweight champion to me. China is the first legitimate women's wrestler, I believe. She's the first one to really step in and show that women are not only capable of having entertaining wrestling matches, but also doing it with men. She won the Intercontinental Championship twice, and she's the only woman to ever do that. Had she stuck around the company, I don't know if we would have got bra and panties matches or lingerie pillow fights or any of that stuff. You might have seen it, but it might not have been as prominent. And she could have had matches with Jazz. She could have matches with Bull Nakano, with Victoria. Some of these women that were around at the time that had a more physical style. I don't want a fantasy book, but I mean, China and Rhea Ripley to me is the all-time women's wrestling match as far as fantasy booking goes. I would love to see that, but obviously we never will. And Brian Pillman, the loose cannon. Also, I believe he could have been a multi-time world heavyweight champion had his act been straightened out, but he is the loose cannon for a reason, off the cuff more often than not. I think he would have had an incredible rivalry with Stone Cold Steve Austin and maybe could have been on the level of Austin and The Rock, just off promos alone, not to even mention the in-ring ability. But it's sad to talk about some of these people and the potential they could have had because, like you said, they could have been trainers. And I feel like they had so much left to give to the business, and it's unfortunate that we lost them all too soon because the business could really benefit from having these people around.
Wonderfully said, Donnie. I know, again, a lot of these guys, I have a soft spot for a lot of them. I remember waking up, I was going to school. I had to have been in first grade maybe. And I remember my parents telling me about Owen Hart passing away. And I was like, I couldn't even grasp that, but the bizarre thing about it, and I want to say same with Brian Pillman, because those guys died when they did. I don't know if this is a weird thing to bring up or admit here, but I almost at a young age, I was very nervous. Whenever they would do the intro, like the WWF intro, they'd have all the noises and sounds, and it was like a quick 20-second thing, and then it would cut to black. I started becoming nervous that the next screen was going to be a remembering somebody for passing away thing, and because of the ones that had happened. And I think that really traumatized me back then, now that I think about that. But I was always like, am I going to see someone else, that died? Like I couldn't really grasp stuff like that. So I understand that completely. Josh, I'll go to you. You had a tough time pronouncing Yokozuna's name the last time you were on this show. And here's your time to redeem yourself. Scott Hall, Brian Pillman, Owen Hart, Chyna, Yokozuna. What more could these guys and girls have done in the business had they lasted a little bit longer?
So Yokozuna, not Yokozuna, like I said last time. I feel like he did have a lot more to present to the business. However, his weight was getting in the way of things. But the weight thing is also a double-edged sword. I feel like his size and his image helped attract people to watch him in order for him to become a draw. Would he have lasted, or would he have been as high as he was in the business without that look, without him being overweight at the time? Who knows? Probably not. I feel like the weight made him the attraction. So it's a double-edged sword for him. You either have this big 400-pound guy and you attract the crowd, you get the money, you make him to be one of the top guys in the company for a few years, or you have him slim down, lose weight, live longer, and potentially have him only be like a mid-card type of talent. I would love to have seen him be healthier, lose the weight, continue to main event on the card. But the reality of it is the weight made him a draw, in my opinion. Brian Pillman, I believe if he would have lived longer, he would have been in the top 4 or the top 5 people of the Attitude Era, along the likes of Stone Cold, The Rock, Mankind, Triple H. He would have had multiple world title runs. Instead of having a Stone Cold Rock feud or Stone Cold Mr. McMahon feud, you probably would have had a Pillman McMahon feud or a Pillman Rock feud along the same quality lines as their feuds with Stone Cold. I think he could have been I don't want to say the face of the business, because I can never imagine him being a pure baby face, but definitely the top heel in the company at the time, with him dabbling in being like a tweener or a baby face when they needed him to be. Chyna, I feel like she's more appreciated now than what she was 10, 15, 20 years ago, because of how WWE has elevated the women's division over the past 10 or so years. I feel like if she was in WWE now, she would be on the same level as Rhea Ripley or Charlotte. She would be dominating the division and putting on these stellar matches with Charlotte, with Rhea, with Becky, with Bayley, the whole shebang. Owen Hart, I do feel like Owen was a lot better than Bret, especially in the ring and even on the mic. However, I feel like he was always going to live in the shadow of Bret. And I feel like what happened at Survivor Series 97 was going to put a damper on any sort of push Owen would have had if he did not have his unfortunate accident at Over the Edge in 1999. I feel like he was always going to be. There's always going to be a ceiling to Owen because of that incident, at least until Bret and Vince made up.
And then, did you discuss Scott Hall, or did I miss that already?
No, I'm sorry, I missed.
No, go ahead.
My bad.
Go ahead.
he should have had the world title if he would have stayed in WWE. He would definitely have won the world title as Razor Ramon. I feel like he was a lower man on the totem pole during his time in WWE, behind Bret Hart, behind Yokozuna, behind Shawn Michaels, behind Diesel, and not everyone can hold the world title in that time that Scott Hall was in WWE. And he was also on, not, I don't want to say the lower man on the totem pole, but he was definitely behind the likes of Sting, Hogan, Kevin Nash, DDP at some point during his Goldberg during his time in WCW. I always feel like his contribution to the business was always more about the product as a whole and not so much his individual accomplishments. I feel like he always wanted to put someone else over compared to other people who just wanted to win titles. I feel like if he would have been more, I don't know what other word to use, but selfish, he would have had a world title run in WCW.
Wow. I do think he could have done that as well. I think Scott Hall could have definitely had a world title run in him. Man, just hearing you guys talk about it and myself going over all these guys really makes me feel like there's so much potential, and it really sucks knowing that there's not any more potential to be had for any of them. Unfortunately, at least for the last 5 that we mentioned. But hell of a segment there. We're about to round out the show, but I would like to present this to you guys, a little bit of a rapid fire. Now, I'm going to have you guys both involved in this. I'm going to try to do it as rapid as we can with a 3-person conference call can be with our connections. They're going to be either yes or no, or they're going to be a multiple choice. So we'll get there. They're going to be randomly across the board for wrestling. Donnie, Josh, are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm ready.
I'm ready too.
All right, here we go. And I mean, as soon as you hear it, give me your answer. And even if the other person says their answer, say your answer as well. I just want to hear what your immediate response. All right, here we go. Hogan or Flair?
Hogan.
Hogan.
What is your favorite era or gimmick of The Undertaker?
Phenom at post WrestleMania 20.
Late 2000s Phenom, same.
Would you be interested in The Rock versus John Cena 3?
No.
Do you prefer pay-per-views take place on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
What is your favorite WrestleMania?
17.
Donnie, was yours also 17?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What is your favorite face of Foley?
Cactus Jack.
Mankind.
What is your favorite match of the first 9 WrestleManias that does not include Hulk Hogan?
Macho Man Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Same.
Mania 3.
Yep.
Favorite tag team?
Ever or current?
Ever.
Dudley Boys.
New Age Outlaws.
Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels?
Shawn.
Brett.
And last but certainly not least, what is your favorite wrestling podcast?
It's the Juice Box, baby. Come on.
I gotta go with the Juice.
Wow, you guys are so kind. Hell of a rapid fire. That was great. I love that the the quickest answer you guys had and simultaneously was that you guys both don't want Rock Cena 3. Which is,
No.
which
I do not want that whatsoever.
Give me Rock.
it's just
2 is enough.
Who do you want, Donnie? Rock and who?
Roman. Just give me Rock and Roman. I don't need Rock and Cena again.
It's funny because we got the first one. We never should have got the second one, but because we got the second one, I figure what the hell, let's get a third one. Because I would be interested. There's just no way they can pull it off. But yeah, the rubber match. But yeah, I agree with Rockets.
About the second one, I agree with what you said earlier that Punk should have been in it, and it should have been.
Make it a triple threat, and then anybody could have Punk could have taken the pin, and it wouldn't have made any difference in the world. But so.
You know what we do need though? MJF versus Cena.
Oh.
Yeah, you know what? MJF 2024 might dictate that. We'll have to see what happens in the upcoming calendar year, Josh.
That's what I'm hoping for. So, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, indeed. Wow. Once again, great time with you guys. Donnie, Josh, myself, Juice Springsteen. Been going at it for over an hour and a half, but we really covered a lot of ground today. A lot of potential ground. A lot of interesting topics. Who's going to win Money in the Bank? Are you going to buy the AEW video game? What would have happened, this, that, or the other with any of these guys or girls in pro wrestling? And, of course, my fun little rapid fire segment, which I really want to continue going forward, depending on who we have on as guests. But I want to thank both of you guys for being on the Juice Box once again. I had a hell of a time the first time. And I got to say, the sequel was better than the first. We had a lot of good stuff, a lot of great insight from both of you. And it's just great to bounce off all of you guys and have a great banter. So I appreciate you guys being on the show today, Josh and Donnie.
Thanks, Juice. Always a pleasure to be on.
Thanks, Juice. I appreciate it. Been looking forward to it. I just want to leave everybody with this, and I'm not going to take up too much more time because we've been talking forever. Internet wrestling community as a whole, but internet wrestling community main front and foremost. We don't need to compare everything, man. Not everything needs to be AEW versus WWE. We're in a great time in wrestling right now. We got Money in the Bank and SummerSlam coming up. We got Forbidden Door and we got All In coming up. Just enjoy it. Enjoy all of it. Go watch Impact. Go watch New Japan. Go watch NWA if that's what you're into. I'm not, but if you're into it, go watch that. Just enjoy wrestling as a whole and stop being so toxic on social media to one another.
That's right. More wrestling is better for everybody. And we also have All Out right after All In. So you can't even leave 1 week without another AEW show. So props to you, Donnie. That was a good way to close this out. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen or on Instagram, Juicy Wrestling Closet. JuicySteen.podbean.com. Find this show on Google Podcasts or on iTunes. As always, rate this, review it, give it 5 stars like Dave Meltzer would, or I might come up with my own rating system, the Juice Springsteen 5 straws. So this has been the Juice Box. Donnie, Josh, I'm Juice Springsteen, and we'll see you guys later with another episode of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.